Over the last decade, we've seen some major employers take control of their 403B plans, consolidate to a single vendor, lock in fantastic investment options, including extremely low-cost index funds, and just generally take responsibility for the plan and offer it as part of their employee benefits package, as we think it should be.
The comparison between a teacher who invests in Equitable for 30 years and a teacher who invests in Fidelity or Vanguard. It often is a difference of $500,000 or more over 30 years. We then give them more information on how they can advocate for better investing options.
Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
All right. Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to FI. I'm Bill Young, but I'm turning it over to Jackie. This is a takeover today. Jackie's going to bring us into the show.
Yes. How are you guys doing today? Have we got a treat for you? So the 403B retirement system for K-12 teachers is broken. And our guest today is the dynamic duo who are fixing it. So if you're a teacher or another professional who works for an employer that provides a 403B or 457B, listen up. Bill, I thought I knew everything there needed to know about these plans, but I don't. And do you have a 403B?
No, I don't. I've lived in the solo 401k world where I basically have freedom to do whatever I want to do, which is what I think everybody should have, but we'll get into that today.
Yeah, because it's not so pretty for the K through 12 teacher world. And I just love these guys. I got to know them 7 years ago. I was on their podcast and I've been following them ever since. And I'm not even a teacher, so you know their stuff is good. They're funny, they're down to earth. But one thing they have in common is that they absolutely love on teachers. So today with us is teacher Dan Otter, PhD, and certified financial planner Scott Dauenhauer. Together, they co-host the Teach and Retire Rich podcast and the 403B Wise website and Facebook group, and they love teachers. So their mission is simple: demystifying the 403B system and advocating for better retirement choices for K through 12 teachers. They recently extended this to include the advantage of the 457B. We're going to get into that because that sort of has superpowers. They've been leaning towards suggesting that over the 403B. So we'll get into that a little bit. So Dan is a former elementary school teacher, and you'll see a little bit of that in him because he does a great job of explaining things. And he's the executive director of 403bwise.org. This is a nonprofit organization working to fix this broken K through 12 403B plan. Money Magazine named him a money hero for his extraordinary efforts to improve others' financial well-being. Now, Scott, he's a CFP like me. He is owner of the Meridian Wealth Management, an independent firm that provides fiduciary advice and planning for public school employees. He was recently awarded the Forerunner Award for being a financial industry innovator. So these guys are not too shabby. They're actually heroes and trusted voices in the movement to reform educator retirement plans. So Dan and Scott, I'm rambling on long enough. Welcome to Catching Up to FI.
Wow, that's not a ramble. That is the best introduction we've ever gotten, Scott.
Well deserved, you guys. Well deserved.
What's important here is if we aren't a teacher, we all know a teacher. My son is a teacher. His girlfriend's a teacher. You guys are teachers. Jackie, you are a teacher as a CFP. That is your passion. But whether people know it or not, doctor means teacher, not healer. So we are all teachers at heart, and we got to love on the teachers in the world that really are the foundation of our education and hopefully our financial education. So today we're going to find out how to help them with their retirements. Right, Jackie?
That's right. That's right. So these guys, their world is all about that. So Scott and Dan, I want to start out with, we have a bias toward duos. You guys are a wonderful duo like us. You co-host a podcast together, but I'm curious how you came together, because you've got someone in the financial planning world and then you've got someone in the teacher world. So Dan, let me start with you and tell us how this came together.
It was a long time ago. It was before Tinder, but Scott and I met on the internet.
Did it just swipe right or swipe left?
Yeah, Scott, I've never heard you answer this. Did you take your time?
I started right and then I went left.
I don't even know what left or right means.
I don't either. I've never had the app.
So the quick story is I was an elementary school teacher in Southern California, and sales agents would come into my room after the kids had left and try to sell products, which I had no idea about. And they would also come into our staff lounge. They would offer free lunches. I knew nothing about saving for retirement, but their presence led me to start investigating what I had as a teacher. I knew I had a pension. I knew it was pretty good. I was in California, but we had a supplemental plan called the 403B. This is really pre-internet. There's not much writing in the general public about the 403B. So I set out to self-educate myself. And what I found out was teachers, in contrast to 401k participants, were being sold very high cost, onerous products. And it made me mad. So in 2000, I launched the website 403BWise. We were at .com at the time. And Scott, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Before I take it from there, I just want to say thank you for having us on. We've known Jackie for a long time and big fan. And we just had a few minutes to meet Bill, and you just seemed like such a cool person. So thanks for having us on. So yeah, my wife is a teacher. She will have completed her 28th year of teaching. She's a middle school science teacher.
Yay.
I don't know if it was her first or second year. Some guy just walked into her classroom, said he was sent by the school district and by the California State Teachers Retirement System to explain her retirement plan. And she's like, well, my husband is a finance guy. At the time, I worked for Morgan Stanley and was getting my CFP. And she said, so can he meet with us as well? And he's like, yeah. So I came down, sat in the classroom. 5 minutes into the conversation, I realized this guy was not sent by the school district. He was not sent by CalSTRS. He was trying to sell us what's called an equity indexed annuity, or at the time was called an equity indexed annuity.
So Scott, wait a minute. Are you telling me that he lied?
Yeah, under false pretenses, he entered. What is the guy doing on this campus? This is what blew me away. I'm like, this is a public school, and this guy's just walking around door to door. I get it's after school, but still, I just thought it was strange. I thought it was really weird. And then he came in under false pretenses, which I didn't like. And then when I learned that what he was selling, I had not heard of that product at that point in time. This is 25 years ago. It was in its infancy, and they're really toxic products. So I was like, oh, you don't work for the school district, do you? No. You don't work for CalSTRS, do you? No. So I asked him to leave, and then I called the school district. I'm like, what is going on? They tried to explain to me the crazy world of 403B. And they faxed me this one page with all these just lists of companies, and some of them had phone numbers, some of them didn't. Some of the phone numbers were crossed out and a new number was put on it. I'm like, what is this? I don't want to have anything to do with it. This is crazy. So I just forgot it ever happened. But then a colleague of my wife asked me to evaluate a policy she had been sold in her 403B. And it was one of these equity indexed annuities. And it was one of the worst policies I'd ever seen. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was like a 20-year surrender period, and surrender charges started at 18%. She was told she was going to get like a 12% return. The market doesn't even return 12%. So this policy was never going to return more than 3% if she was lucky. And this made me irate. I couldn't believe it. And so I thought, this almost happened to my wife. It happened to one of my wife's colleagues. Is this happening everywhere? So I jumped on the internet, typed in 403B and something else, and up came this little website called 403BWise. At the time, it was a .com. Now it's a .org. and it had this little American flag waving on the left-hand side of it. And it kind of looked like Craigslist almost with all these articles, but it was hilarious. And the main story highlighted was, what's that fishy smell in the teacher's lounge?
My absolute favorite.
It's one of my favorite stories ever posted. And so I just reached out to the guy who ran it. And it turned out to be this elementary school teacher in Corona, California, named Dan Otter, who lived up the freeway from me, crazily enough. And that's how we ended up meeting. We got together that summer and wrote a book.
Wow. And the book's name is?
Dan will show it to you. The book is out of print. Go ahead, Dan.
The 403B Wise Guide.
So I guess you're the 403B wise guys.
Yeah.
That's what people call us. We self-published this, and Tia Kreff ended up buying, I think, over 10,000 copies of this because they were making a play at the time to get into the K-12 space. Once I met Scott, the site really took off because then it had real expertise. Again, I was a layman learning about investing, learning about saving for retirement.
Well, that's interesting you say that because that's actually true about this show. Once Jackie came on board and she gave us legitimacy and the CFP brain, we've taken off and we have a lot in common here. I need to dial this back a little bit because in order to understand the 403B, I think we need to understand the history of it. What was it before that? Why did it come online? Because this predates the 401k by 20 years. Take us through a little bit about the history because it creates kind of the problems that you guys have been trying to unwind ever since.
Sure. It's such a good question. And people are often shocked to hear that it's 20 years older than the 401k. So it was created in the late 50s. And initially, educators could only invest in annuity products and insurance products. This changed in 1974 when something called the 403b-7 was added to the language of the retirement plan, allowing investment into mutual funds. 1974 was a long time ago, yet here we are in 2026, and the overwhelming majority of money flows into insurance-based products.
That is wild to me because I don't know about you, Bill, but for the longest, I thought a 403B was pretty much written in the same part of the code as a 401k, the same rules. Scott, when you were explaining that your wife had this list of vendors, I'm like, what the heck is that? I worked for corporate America over 20 years, and I couldn't imagine a salesperson coming into our building and the workspace and them trying to talk to the employees. So I think for most people, it's just wild to think of that. Now, maybe people in the teacher space may or may not be familiar with the fact that they have to choose vendors. It's hard enough to choose the investments inside a retirement plan. Now you're asking me to choose a vendor from this big old list? How on earth did that come about? That's crazy.
It is crazy. So in 1974, I believe, is also when ERISA was passed. So it's kind of ironic that government plans are not subject to ERISA.
So can you tell us what ERISA is to make sure everyone understands what that is, because it's going to be important in our conversation?
Yeah. So ERISA stands for Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And I believe it was passed in 1974. And it basically created a fiduciary structure around not just defined benefit plans, pensions, but also defined contribution plans, what would eventually become defined contribution plans. It basically made the employer a fiduciary to their employees. I mean, they had to put their employees' best interests first, created structures and frameworks around that. It was very important legislation. It was landmark legislation, and it is essentially what governs 401k plans to this day. And I don't want to say the scare into employers to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, we have seen some pretty massive lawsuits over the last decade or so. And sometimes that's what it takes to get the employers to do the right thing for their employees, is the threat of a lawsuit. I think some of these lawsuits have gotten out of hand, but that's a whole other topic. But with 403Bs are subject to ERISA, but not if they're government. So government plans are completely exempt from ERISA. And so there is not this enforcement mechanism, or there's not a fiduciary responsibility by the employer. If there is, it has to be within state law. And almost no state laws have a specific fiduciary duty for 403B plans. And so most employers look at them as an afterthought. And the way 403Bs evolved, they were almost like IRAs. They were just pass-throughs. So employers would say, hey, we're going to offer a 403B. You go find your provider and tell us where to send the money, and we'll just send it there. And that's how they operate. So it's like an enhanced IRA that were offered through your employer. And that just led to all sorts of problems. Fast forward to 2009, new regulations went into effect that essentially required the employers to take control of their 403B plans and made them at least be in charge of them a little bit, but it still didn't put a fiduciary responsibility for making sure that the products that are being offered are appropriate. And so what has happened is you end up with school districts that offer dozens and dozens of vendors. In some cases, like when Dan was an elementary school teacher, I think he had over 100 investment options, companies available to him.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was 100. And Scott, remember what LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District, had at the time?
Was it close to 200 or was it over 200?
225. I did a spreadsheet. It was a resource we had on our website at the time. Can you imagine aggregating that money? Think of the financial burden a school district incurs when they have massive vendor lists. It's insane.
And that's just the vendors. Many of those vendors offer multiple products. And then you have multiple agents selling for each of those vendors. So there's dozens or hundreds of these agents trolling school campuses and school employers and teachers and classified employees trying to sell them these products. None of them are vetted by anyone for quality.
Yeah, this is just unconscionable to me because it's hard enough to clean up 401k, and Jackie's written a little one pager on how do you interpret your 401k, and that's one vendor. Then you layer vendor upon vendor on this with product upon product, and you complexify this domain where nobody knows what to do. So they're going to be fear-based and get preyed upon by the next person that walks in the door that says, oh, I can make it simple for you. Just do what I'm going to tell you to do. Creates a smokescreen that you can't see through, and you're preying on the people that need our help the most, the teachers of our country.
That's what's so infuriating. Teachers have very modest salaries. And yes, they do often have pensions, but pensions are getting worse and worse for new hires. New hires are often put into tiers that make you want to cry, okay, because they have to work until they're 65 or older. They have to teach longer. Teaching is physically demanding. It is remarkable that Scott's wife has taught for 28 years, and I think she's up for at least probably 5 more. I have so much respect for that. I did it for 10 years, and it was exhausting, and that's when I was much younger.
Teachers and emergency doctors have a lot in common, as we were talking about before the show, because the system may want you to stay in your job for 40 or 50 years, but we don't live in that 9-to-5 for 40-year economy anymore. People are mobile and moving, and their pensions and their retirement need to move with them easily and be portable. This is non-portabilized, and it locks you into a position for a time that maybe you don't want to work at. And it's designed to push your retirement out and not help you retire earlier. And we're here to try and give people back their autonomy and their choice so that they choose when they want to retire. They choose the vehicles, and then they actually ultimately choose the vendors and the menus that they provide. We have Jeff York, a mutual friend of ours, that used your site way back in the day to go to his school board and get them to bring Vanguard on as the premier vendor for his school district. And he is the wealthy millionaire or wealthy custodian that retired in his 50s and fishes every day, listens to our show, and chimed in knowing that we were going to have you on the show. It's really interesting how there's 6 degrees of separation here, and that the work you guys started doing 20, 25 years ago impacted him as a janitor in a school system to change the retirement plan for his entire school district. That's just amazing.
We love Jeff so much. And Jeff is an example of this idea that Scott and I always talk about. Yeah, Scott and I have this website. We put out content, but we're nothing without people like Jeff York. Jeff didn't just hoard that information for himself and take advantage of having a low-cost provider like Vanguard. He shared his knowledge with colleagues. And even in retirement, he is still mentoring people, other custodians, other educators. So he's awesome. We love hearing from Jeff, and we're very proud of knowing him. And I think we dubbed him the wealthy custodian, right, Scott? I think that was the name of the podcast that we had him on, because he's wealthy. He's not just about money, he's about lifestyle too. And yeah, there's so much to admire about Jeff.
Yeah, speaking of Jeff being a custodian, I want to clarify something. So we know that a lot of these issues are unique to the K through 12 school systems. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't necessarily have to be a school teacher. It's the employer, not the position. So even if you're a custodian, an administrator, a therapist, or anybody that works for one of these K through 12 employer school district, all these rules that we're going to talk about apply.
Absolutely. And that's what's so frustrating, because teachers will go to the benefits officials and say, look, we have a terrible vendor list. We have 20 vendors. We have a vendor that was fined $50 million by the SEC. That's Equitable, formerly known as AXA. I would bet they're available at probably every school district that an educator listener of your program works in. And we'll say, you're an employee as the benefits official. Don't you want to have fewer good choices instead of lots of bad choices with a sprinkling of maybe one or two good choices? That's what has sort of surprised Scott and I, that there's not more proactive action on the part of school districts. It's not to say that we don't get emails regularly from school districts saying, because of your rating system, and we can talk about that later, we have a rating system where we grade school districts. Because of the grade we've assigned them, they've often made a change, but typically it comes from the educator, someone like a Jeff York, who's at the ground level, who's a participant, who advocates for change.
Yeah, I never heard you blame the administrators or the people at the top of the school district. Mostly it's about the actual salespeople and the insurance companies and the vendors. Do you put any of the responsibility on the school districts?
Yeah, I do. I think there was a time where school districts didn't really look at this as a plan. It was just this optional, what they would call supplemental benefit, because teachers have pensions. And so they don't need this 403B, and it just wasn't really important. That's changed a lot in the last 30 years, especially when the IRS came out with new regulations and essentially forced employers to take responsibility for these plans. And then also, as Dan mentioned, these pension systems are getting weaker. New teachers are coming in new tiers. And what that means is they are not getting as good of pension benefits as the teachers who are outgoing. And a supplemental retirement plan like a 403B no longer is supplemental. It's essential to a dignified and comfortable retirement. You have to have it. Just like most people outside of teaching have Social Security, then they add on their 401k. Teachers have a pension. Oftentimes they don't have Social Security. So they need to offer that 403B. And at this point in time, it's hard to ignore. And a lot of employers have started to take control of their plans. Over the last decade, we've seen some major employers take control of their 403B plans, consolidate to a single vendor, lock in fantastic investment options, including extremely low cost index funds, and just generally take responsibility for the plan and offer it as part of their employee benefits package, as we think it should be. So we have started to see that a lot more. We're being reached out to a lot more of my employers. The overall majority of employers still ignore it. We'll probably talk about our rating system later, but we grade school district retirement plans, and something like 30% of school district retirement plans still receive an F.
Let's jump into the good, the bad, and the ugly right now, because what is being created here is kind of a cesspool of all 90%, 95% bad investments. And as long as they have a few of the good ones in there, they can call themselves fiduciary that they've done the right thing, but they make it so hard to find the ones that you want. It is almost counterintuitive. We're creating late starters here. What you're talking about to me is exactly what happened to me in Gen X. Was I didn't get the memo that we were going from defined benefit to defined contribution plans. And what you're telling me, or what I'm hearing, is it's happening again, where the pensions that were the rock of public service, police, fire, teachers, all of our critical infrastructure, they are getting weaker. And because of that, basically these school districts are offloading retirement onto the teachers, and they may go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to be taken care of. I don't have to worry about anything. But wait a minute, they're going to wake up like I did 20 years later. Wait, no one's coming to save me. I need to do this for myself. So that to me is a critical piece, where we're having the same thing happen again that happened to me because of this erosion of the pension system. So this is critical.
Bill, the most common email Scott and I get is, it goes like this: I just learned about your website and your resources. Using your grading system, I just found out I'm in one of the red rated vendors. So Scott came up with this fantastic vendor rating system modeled after the traffic light: green, go, good; yellow, caution; red, stop. Overwhelming majority of offerings in school districts are red. So the email says, I'm in one of the red vendors. Thank you so much for having this tool, and I have a green vendor available, and I'm going to invest in it. Or I don't have any good options, but help me advocate for a better option. But overwhelmingly, these are teachers that are 10 years in, Bill. So to your point, they've lost 10 years of saving in a quality product. Probably our best tool we have, as much as we love our podcast, our books, our website, it's the 403B Wise. And now we've added to the name 457B Wiser Facebook group. We have over 22,000 members. And the number one question is, I just found out I was in a bad plan. Help me get out of it. Because that's a whole other thing we can get into. These companies make it extremely easy to get into, and they often do it by giving you a sandwich, so it initially tastes good, but then you get the food poisoning later when you find out how expensive it is, and it's very onerous to get out of these, because often just to get out of it, Scott had alluded to like exit fees of, I think he said 18%. They're typically, what would you say, Scott, now 6 to 10% if you want to take your money out. Think about that. You have to surrender 10% of your money, not to get the money, but to move it to another 403B. So your point is spot on, Bill, about teachers being forced to probably teach longer because of financial missteps that really aren't their fault. They didn't know what they didn't know.
So you guys brought up a few other retirement options for teachers. So initially I was thinking, why don't they just stick with the pension or do something else? But they have the unique ability to stack some of these retirement options. So for the pension, back in the day, that used to take care of most teachers, right? But you're saying that's been eroded. So are you saying that most teachers today, probably the pension payouts would not be enough for a typical retirement?
I think teachers who are retiring right now and who have been career teachers are probably going to be okay. They were put into the system when those tiers or the system was pretty good. It's the newer teachers that are, I think, more problematic because they're going to get a much lower payout. But I want to say even those teachers, they can benefit from a 403B or, as Dan mentioned, a 457 for a couple reasons. One, the pension might be good, but you might be a career switcher. So you might not have 35 years in that pension. You might only have 20. My wife has 28 years of teaching, and she's not even 51 yet. I just said her age on this podcast.
You're in big trouble, Scott.
Imagine, to get a good payout on your pension, you got to be at least 60 years old. There are different things about your pension where having a supplemental account can really give you more optionality in retirement. And the other thing that we don't talk about when we talk about retirement is health insurance costs, especially nowadays. Teachers don't often retire and have health insurance paid for until Medicare if they retire prior to 65. And even if they do, it's not cheap. And then you get to Medicare, then you find out that Medicare costs more than what you were paying for health insurance as a teacher. And health insurance in retirement is becoming a bigger and bigger portion of your retirement expense. So in order to help combat that, you need to have money. Most people need to have money saved in a 403B or a 457 to help supplement.
This is even more complicated for, say, public service folks with regards to the plethora of choices they have going into their job, because you've got your pension, your 403B, your 457, maybe a supplemental 401k, and you can't put money everywhere. And so the choices that you have to make on the front end are really so much more catastrophic than, say, the person that takes a corporate job. There's this 401k and defaulted into a target date retirement fund at a 3% rate. You got to log in and tweak some of that to get it where you want to be for your quote unquote lifetime savings rate. But even deciding whether or not to take the pension option or opt out of it into managing your own retirement becomes huge to people that are 20, 21, 22 years old. Where do they get help other than your site for helping make these critical, fundamental, foundational retirement financial decisions at the beginning of what hopefully is a long teacher's career?
Yeah, that's well said. And I like also what Jackie said about stacking retirement plans. And one plan we didn't even mention, which is available to everyone, is the Roth IRA. And Scott and I often say every young teacher, so any young teacher listening to this, we would say start with a Roth IRA. I'm sure your audience knows the benefits of after-tax contributions, because in retirement, you're not paying tax on this money. And the beauty of a Roth IRA is a teacher can open it with any company. Two of our favorites are Vanguard and Fidelity. They could open it up, a Roth IRA, probably in 20 minutes by just going online. If they end up career switching or even changing school districts, there's no messy transfer paperwork. They just have this plan. Then we would go for probably the 457B over the 403B. And the primary reason for that is when you separate service, you can access 457B money penalty free. With the 403B, you have to wait until age 55 and retire. And so, Bill, you were talking about giving employees more and more retirement flexibility. So we think the Roth IRA and the 457B really provide this for educators.
That's excellent. We consider that 457B to have superpowers. The fact that you can get to it. Because, a lot of us in the fire community, I retired early myself. So I'm like, man, I wish I had that. So I want to make it clear that another part of it being a superpower is that if they want to, they would be allowed to contribute to the 403B and the 457B at the same time with two different limits. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. They can contribute to both of them up to their respective limits. And they share the same contribution limit. So if you're under 24,500, if you're under 50, and then 30,500 if you're over 50. Is that what it is, Dan?
I think it's 7,500 in catch up. I'd have to check. I'd have to catch up on that.
Yeah, and they get adjusted every single year. So whenever you're listening to this, check the IRS to make sure you know the limit, but it's a lot.
It's 8,000. Over age 50 is 8,000.
Okay, gotcha.
It is kind of ironic that we, in general, pay teachers so little in this country, and they're the ones who get to contribute to both retirement plans. It's like, hey, you get this great benefit. Good luck collecting on it.
Right. It's like if you're a married couple, I guess you might be able to take advantage of that or something. But I just wanted to make sure that we've probably talked about it on the show before, Bill, that if you have a 457B, you can max that out to 20 something. And on top of that, you can do the 403B. So I have an important question for you guys. Are you now saying that perhaps you would prioritize the 457B over the 403B, considering the issues? And I don't think the 457B has the same issues as the 403B. So clarify that for me.
Sure. I'll start off and Scott can add some details here. The other advantage of the 457B is generally you have less vendors being offered. Typical school district, you'll have 15 or more 403B vendors and only a handful of 457B vendors. Generally, they're better. Not always, generally. But one of the most powerful 457B advantages are state-run 457B plans. Every state in the country has a 457B that firefighters, teachers, state employees contribute to. So you have massive amounts of money under management. We always cite the New York State Deferred Comp 457B plan. We believe they have now over $30 billion of assets under management. This allows them to drive costs down. They have an S&P 500 fund that charges 0.008. I didn't say 0.8. I didn't say 0.08. I said 0.008. Every teacher in the state of New York is eligible to contribute to that plan. 50 states, 50 plans. But here's another thing that angers Scott and I. Not all states, I'm talking to you, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, allow teachers to contribute to the state 457B. Why would you not do that? For the states that do allow it, and we have a resource on 457bwiser.org where you can search each state. We grade the state plan, and we also list if educators in that state are eligible to contribute to it. But if you're a school district listening to this, if I was a New York school district, I'd offer one 403B plan, probably like a Vanguard or a Fidelity, and the 457B, or just simply offer the 457B and diminish the 403B. Scott can elaborate more on this plan we have. Scott, why don't you share how we think school districts should handle this question?
Yeah, so the laws for 457 plans, at least for government employers, have changed quite a bit over the last 10 to 15 years. And recently, the biggest change was that even if you were employed, you couldn't take money out of your 457 at 59 and a half, like you can with a 403B. It's called an in-service withdrawal. You couldn't do it until you were like 70 and a half, even if you were employed. And that wasn't great because it really made the 403 a better investment option in many cases if people were going to work past 55. So that changed several years ago. And then there was another technical rule. There's this weird rule in 457 that I'm sure your listeners are going to love listening to, but you couldn't start contributions in the same month. If you wanted to start contributions, we're at the beginning of June when we're recording this. If you wanted your June paycheck, often teachers get paid on a monthly basis. If you wanted your June paycheck to have money go into your 457 and it's past June 1st, you can't have money come out of your paycheck. It has to come out in July. And this created so many problems because you have to make your contribution reduction agreement the month prior to the month that you want contributions to come out. Needless rules. This was finally repealed a couple years ago. Combine that with the fact that there is no 10% penalty prior to 59 and a half. It now offers Roth. It's such a great plan. It is, we think it's a better option we think it's your first dollar, as long as it's a reasonable 457 plan. And the other thing that we like about 457 plans is, unlike 403B, most states have fiduciary laws that cover 457 deferred compensation plans. Now, they're not always enforced, but at least there's the threat of that. And so we believe the future is 457, not 403B.
Yeah, it sounds like the way to fix all the problems that originate with the history of 403Bs administered through insurance companies is to cut them all out of business by just having an umbrella like 457B plan that we can't clean up these 403Bs. So let's just start fresh with a 457 state-run plan that has simple top-tier vendor options that are clear. And then all of a sudden, everybody's, okay, I better clean up my act so I can get into that plan.
That is exactly right. That's exactly our thinking. We're like, we have failed at our job for 25 years in trying to clean up the 403B. And so we're like, I got an idea. Let's just not clean it up. We're going to continue to try to clean it up, but let's get everything into the 457 going forward because there's not nearly as much work there. Most of the infrastructure is already there, the state plans, and let's do that. And let's de-emphasize the 403B. push education on the 457. And one of the other things that goes really unnoticed is that 457 plans, well, school districts, there's over 13,500 school districts in the United States. That's a lot of school employers. But the overwhelming majority of teachers probably work for 20% of those employers. So that means there's an enormous number of small school districts. You know how hard it is for a small school district to take control of a 403B plan and go out to the marketplace and get a good 403B, go single vendor and do all that? It's very difficult. But if you have a state plan that offers the same pricing to a school district with 1,000 employees as a school district with 10, suddenly those school employees at the school district that has 10 employees, they have access to a retirement plan that's probably better than the average 401k of a large employer in this country. And that's why we're so excited about 457 for educators and these state plans.
Just to give some data on what Scott's saying, he had mentioned that there's over 13,500 school districts. And what we've done for years is urge school districts to go single vendor, because that takes away the complexity for an educator. If there's just one good choice, you're not going to be fooled by a bad vendor. A lot of school districts get major pushback. There's lots of good people in school districts that wanted to change the 403B. All of a sudden, the NTSA, which is the big lobbying group that wants to keep the multi-vendor system in place, they will fly into town. They will spend money lobbying against this change. So we have referenced this grading tool we have, and to access it, you'd go to the homepage of 403BWise in the top left, and it's very simple. You select your state, and then after you select your state, all the school districts drop down, and then select your school district and see if we have the data. We've got data on 5,349 plans. We have got all the big school districts. So right now we have data covering 2 million teachers, and we believe we have data for 65% of all K-12 teachers. So this should apply to most of your listeners. If we don't have the data, there's a prompt where you can submit it to us and we'll upload it. So on a daily basis, we're getting 2 to 4 school districts submitted. We go ahead and put that on our database. But here are the current grades. We give an A to a school district if they're single vendor. Out of the 5,349 school districts we've graded, and again, this is the majority of districts that teachers work in, only 170 are single vendor. That's 3.2%. Even less have a B. That means you have 3 or less vendors, you put the plan out to bid, and you've selected good vendors. 22 school districts. Overwhelmingly, 62% of the school districts in our database have a C. A C means you have to have at least one green vendor. And while that sounds great, oh, this school district has a green vendor, let's say a Fidelity or a Vanguard, the problem is there's multiple other high-cost products. And unless people listen to this podcast or know about our website, they're going to fall for the person in the staff lounge or that email. And then finally, a little over 31% are Ds and Fs. F means they only have red-rated vendors. So it's a disaster right now.
All right, I'm going to shout out some of the red-rated vendors here because I'm the guy with the license to kill. And these are insurance companies, guys. It's not going to be hard to figure this out. It's Equitable. Boy, does that sound equitable, but it's one of the ones you got to watch out for. You got to watch out for Corebridge, or what used to be Valic, and I think Equitable bought Corebridge. And then there's also Lincoln and Ameriprise. These are names that are out there in these plans. If you see them, yes, they're probably going to have a good product here or there, but they're going to be filtered in amongst a bunch of expensive, hard to get out of products that you've heard about, like annuities. So guys, look for those red flags. Are there any other red flags they should watch out for when they're trying to filter out the wheat from the chaff?
We will say when you go to our tool, it shows the listing of the companies in our different grading boxes, and we'll have red plus, red minus. And something that's often confusing is Corebridge is a red rated vendor when it's part of a multi-vendor arrangement, but when Corebridge has participated in RFPs to be single vendor like they did in Chicago, they suddenly become a green rated vendor because all of a sudden they lower their costs. So we get a lot of emails about people saying, I teach in Chicago and you're giving it an A in its core bridge. My friend teaches in this other district. They have core bridge and a multi-vendor, and we give it a C. So it shows the absurdity of this, because when school districts force these companies to compete, they don't want to lose business, so they end up lowering their costs.
You guys are basically Jack Bogle to 403Bs.
Oh my, what an honor. That is, wow.
There's so much opacity here. When you unveil and give them grades, nobody wants a C, D, or an F. You have to pony up with lower costs and improve their game and be held accountable. And this industry has been the wild, wild west and not held accountable for so long. I love the strategy of kind of the art of war, where it's, okay, let's not stop pushing against the 403B. Let's take what's already there and go in the back door and take on the 457, where, wait a minute, this will clean up the 403Bs really fast when everybody's exiting the building for the 457B state plans. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, working smart instead of working hard. I'm assuming the biggest challenge that you guys will have saying, hey, why don't you just do the 457B? Again, not every teacher listens to your podcast. We think they should, but it's the messaging that they get from the school district when they start on the first day. Do they usually lead with the 403B? I just don't hear the 457B talked about near enough from just average people that will come to me. They generally will mention maybe a pension and then the 403B.
I mean, what's interesting here is this is no different than drug companies coming to the doctor's lounge and selling their pills. They're pill pushers. They're bringing donuts. They're bringing cookies. And then they were all banned from resident lounges during residency because they realized there was so much bad influence. This is like Northwest Mutual being the only financial lecture I got in residency, selling me whole life insurance and selling me as an advisor when they were just a high-cost salesman. The similarities here are just profound between what happens with teachers in 403Bs and young doctors with the traditional AUM Salesforce financial services industry. I'm mad. I want to turn it on its head. I'm just like you guys. This will change because people like us are no longer willing to be products. We want to be the consumer, the educated consumer. And if there's anything that folks get out of this, the teachers in the world, don't be overwhelmed by what we're talking about. Go to the site, reach out to these guys, dig into it yourselves and grade your system. Find out, okay, the world isn't going to take care of me. I need to own my life. I need to own my financial life. And I do need to educate myself on how to take care of my future self, my retired self, which may want to retire at 50 and not 65.
And you mentioned that we are a nonprofit. We sell no services or products. Everything we do is at no cost, and it's because we get generously supported by a gentleman named Tim Ranzetta. He never tells us to mention this to anyone, but people often wonder, okay, how are you guys able to do this? Tim Ranzetta is the co-founder of a phenomenal nonprofit called Next Gen Personal Finance, whose mission is to get a standalone personal finance class, a required class for graduation. And to date, Tim and his amazing team have gotten 30 states on board. So we are very thankful. Tim read about Scott and I in a series of New York Times articles and reached out to us. That's when we became a nonprofit in 2019, because I kept teaching and running the site on the side. So I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that because I am a financial advisor. I'm a fee-only financial advisor. I don't accept commissions, but I don't actually take clients related to the work that I do for 403B-wise. Anybody who reaches out from 403B-wise, I don't take them on as clients. I am so busy in my practice, I'm not even taking on new clients at the moment. But this nonprofit is not a method for me to grow my business. It never has been. Ever since it started, even with the work with 403B-wise, I don't take clients from it. But I did want to come back to the question that Jackie had about what happens to teachers when they become a new teacher and what does the employer tell them? It's often nothing. Or there will be like a benefits fair. And at the benefits fair, it will be the worst of the worst actors because Vanguard's not going to set up a booth at the benefits fair. Fidelity's not going to set up a booth at the benefits fair. If it's anything, it's the bad actors, it's the red vendors. There's really nothing coming from the employer. Having said that, Dan and I have finally been invited to speak at employer conferences over the last few years. Employer conferences are usually sponsored by the red vendors. And every time we're invited, once the red vendor finds out that we're invited, we are disinvited.
I heard you guys talk about that. Now, was the NTSB one of the conferences?
That's a different story. We'll come back to that one. But we often tell conferences, if they're looking for sponsors, just put us on their speaker list because they'll get them real quick. And then we'll be off their speaker list because they don't want us to speak. But we finally got invited to a few conferences that didn't have financial sponsors. And these employers, this is the first time they were hearing our message. And they were super receptive to it. Jan and I were kind of shocked because we just felt like we had been shunned for all these years. The message had been suppressed. They themselves didn't know it. And so when they heard it from us, they started talking to other conferences, and then we got invited to those conferences, and the message got out. And so now you have employers like Chicago Public Schools. They don't just offer a fantastic 403B, they push it, their 403B and their 457 out to the employees. They have education. They have representatives that help them enroll. They're looking at auto enroll. They are changing their perspective on it to it being actual employee benefit as opposed to something that they have to deal with. And I think that's the perspective shift we need with employers is this isn't something that you just have to deal with. This is an employee benefit that will help you attract and retain quality employees. And if you don't offer a great 403B or 457 in the future, they're going to go to the school district next door.
And on that note, there was a superintendent in Wisconsin. Was it Wisconsin Dells, Scott? I'm trying to remember the school district. He uses their A-rated grading during their hiring fairs because the districts around him do not have an A grade. So to see that impact of this grading system has been really rewarding.
Yeah, and I do think it's a good story, this conference that we got banned from. Do you want to hear that story?
We love good stories. Let's do a couple.
It's inspired by the boss and banned in the USA, right? Bruce Springsteen. So yeah, tell us this story because this is where I feel like you guys are flexing your muscles. Hey, you can be 120 pounds and still flex your muscles and have a powerful impact and stand up for what you believe is right and continue to do the work that you do. So tell our audience about this situation. I've heard you talk about it several times, and it just really speaks to what heroes you guys are.
Scott, you tell it, and I'll read a couple of the lyrics from the song.
Yeah, it's a level of petty that's just ridiculous.
We love petty. We love petty.
So the NTSA is this organization that we talked about. It's a lobbying organization for 403B vendors, but they put on an annual conference, and I had gone to it many times in the past. In fact, a company that I consulted for was asked to speak there, and I've behaved myself, never got in trouble. I can behave myself at a conference. I'm an adult. And for whatever reason, this is 2020, me and Dan had signed up to go to it again. And we had lined up a whole bunch of meetings with different vendors. And one of the things that we like to do is there are a ton of agents and a ton of representatives who work with educators, and they're not all bad. A lot of them are really good. They have really good intentions. They're really good at planning. And we think that people should use a financial advisor when it makes sense, but that financial advisor should be a fiduciary. And they should always put your interests ahead of their own, and the fees should be reasonable. So we're not anti-advice. So we had lined up a bunch of people to talk to, and a lot of our opponents wanted to talk to us as well. And we want to explain ourselves. So yeah, we're going to go and we're going to have fun. And it was supposed to be in Denver. A week before we were set to fly out, I get an email saying that we are not welcome at the conference. Our reservations have been canceled at the hotel. Our conference fees will be refunded, and that if we step foot in the hotel, we will be escorted out by security.
Oh, gosh.
Awesome.
I'm like,
these guys are top notch, or like Frank says, top drawer, top drawer.
We're such a threat. And they couldn't give me any reason. That we'll give you the reason after the conference. And I'm like,
oh, please.
You can't tell me why. It's because we criticized them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've criticized you for years and you haven't banned me from your conference. But I guess the person who was in charge, I had gone to conferences with him for 457 plans. There's another organization called the National Association of Government Defined Contribution Administrators. That's a handful.
Yeah.
NAGDA. And great organization, fantastic organization focused on government 457 plans. He used to work for a company that pushed 457 plans and always invited me to their biggest soirees and all of the things. Now he's in the 403B world and he has to flex his muscles and show that he's a big man. And so he banned us from this conference.
Ooh, that's a strong word.
And we've been banned for every conference because every year I sign up to go and every year I'm told I can't go.
This to me is like the highest honor. This is almost like the Nobel Prize for David versus the Goliath here. So pat yourself on the back from getting banned from an industry conference. I love it.
You know what I'm thinking, Bill? Why don't you and I sign up for it and you and I go?
Yes. Yes.
We'll be the Trojan horse.
That's right.
I love it. So I sent you the link to the blog post I wrote about this, and I have the actual letter that Scott's referencing. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I love it how it says, the Leadership Council has determined that your attendance would be inappropriate given your numerous unfair and biased mischaracterizations of the association and our members. And then the last line, I love it. It just says, you are not allowed at the conference. So I took that and rewrote the lyrics to Born in the USA. I will not sing this because you will lose all of your audience, but I'll just read you one little set of lines here. Leadership Council said, son, stay at home. Seems they are afraid that the truth will be known. They love the index annuity man, and they love their money-making plan. I was born in the USA, but banned from the NTSA. I was born in the USA, but banned from the NTSA. And in that link is a link to the song. Our talented friend Neil Weiss recorded this song. It's awesome. I got my friend who's a weatherman in Los Angeles to do the introduction to it. That's Henry DiCarlo. So that was a nice combination of using three talented friends, including Scott. He was the subject of this song.
That is hilarious. So I will make sure we put that in the show notes because it's so funny. The lyrics are great. The song is even better. We don't want to mess with royalties or anything like that. So we'll just include a link. Now, you guys, how we want to try to wrap this up, we want to talk about your advocacy work, your resources, and all of that, because that's the jumping off point for teachers. When they're listening to this, it's going to be a lot of great information, and perhaps they're ready to say, okay, I want to do something. So the first thing I'd say is listen to your podcast, but you mentioned several times this new tool. How long has it been out? And I have to say that I selfishly, when I was going for my CFP, I needed hours. And I think I pitched, hey, I'll help you vet some of these if you give me CFP hours. Now, that's water under the bridge now, and I'm not mad at you for not using that idea. However,
I don't remember getting that idea.
I think Scott probably got it because he was the CFP.
Scott banned you from the 403BY site. Wow, there's a song.
Yeah, I think he thumped me away and said, oh, I don't know. I have thick skin. And of course, I love you guys no matter what. I don't think there's anything that you could do that would make me change my mind about that. But you referenced this grading tool for 403Bs because a lot of teachers are saying, or maybe the friend of a teacher, the spouse of a teacher, I wonder about the Sydney School District in Ohio, or I wonder about this or that. So tell us when you started with this tool, because I believe it's relatively new, and what is it doing for teachers? Explain that.
Sure. So I'd say it's about 3 years old now. Again, it's on the homepage, the top left of the 403bwise.org website. Go ahead and pick your state. Your school district will pop up. You should be able to get, if we have the data, you'll see how we grade your school district, okay, using that A through F methodology. You can also see how we grade school districts. We start by grading the individual vendors, and you can see the whole list of the most commonly available vendors in what buckets they fall under, green, yellow, or red. That would probably be the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is probably join the 403B Wise and 457B Wiser Facebook group, because these are actual teachers who have made actual changes either in their own plan or their school district's plan. The third resource I would mention is Scott and I do free 1-hour Zoom sessions for school districts. It's probably our favorite thing to do. We did one last week for Lackawanna School District in New York, just outside of Buffalo, New York. We present slides for 30 minutes showing the comparison between a teacher who invests in Equitable for 30 years and a teacher who invests in Fidelity or Vanguard. It often is a difference of $500,000 or more over 30 years. We then give them more information on how they can advocate for better investing options. So those would be the resources I would point people to. Also, our brand new website, 457bwiser.org.
Well, this is great. And I want to take us as a shout out to my son and his girlfriend in Durango, Colorado, who both work in the school district. Maybe because I'm looking at the website 403bwise right now, and I pulled up their school district and it gets a grade of C. If you can pull up Durango, whatever it is, school district 9R, tell me how to interpret this and walk me through it a little bit so I can help them walk through it. And maybe you'll do office hours with them in their school district for us too, because I think that's a great service.
Yeah, we would love to do a presentation for them. So Colorado is very unique, and people don't realize this either, that teachers are eligible to contribute to a 401k. And the state of Colorado has their pension system, PARA, makes available a superb 401k and 457b. So if you are a teacher in the state of Colorado, correct me if I'm wrong here, Scott, by January 1st, every school district has to offer these plans. This should put the 403b out of business in Colorado. There is now no need to do a 403b if you have a 401k and a 457, both excellent plans available to you. In the district you're referencing, which is where my brother works as well and has lived in Durango for over 30 years, very small world, Bill, Horace Mann is the only 403b vendor. What a terrible, I'm going to swear, bastardization of the name Horace Mann. He was a great cutting-edge educator, and this insurance company took this name and offers very mediocre products. So I don't know offhand if right now you can do the para 401k and 457b in Durango, but I would ask your son to check on that. But by January 1st, that will be the options available to him. Scott, would you add anything to that?
No, that's it. Most of the school districts are offering the 401k. Not all of them are offering the 457. What was happening is they weren't offering the Roth option either. And so this forces them to offer both the pre-tax and the Roth option and the 457 and the 401k. And I would also add that is a really good state-run plan. The fees are really good. They lowered the fees. They were really high. It was really high a little while ago at 0.03%, the administrative fee. Ooh. And they lowered it.
And we are doing this live and in action. I see you looking at your screen. So while you're listening to this podcast or once you're done, you may want to do the same thing.
Yeah, Colorado Para has all the information on there, but they lowered it to 0.01 for the 401k. And then so that's a huge drop, like almost 70%. And then 0.02% for the 457. But they've got really good overall fees because you also have to pay a fee for the investment option. But yeah, you can get their target date index funds for 0.06% and $1 a month.
Wow.
That's
amazing.
Awesome. I'm going to probably have my son and his girlfriend hook up with you and go through this because it was a little bit overwhelming to me. And as a new young teacher, all excited about working with kids and helping them write books like my son's girlfriend does in first grade, you're focused on, just like healthcare providers are, you're focused on the people you're serving and not necessarily on taking care of yourself first. And so where you start and these choices you make when you enter this place, going to 403 Wise, or in this case, 457 Be Wiser, is a great place to start to know the questions to ask and then find resources to make these critical few foundational decisions that will impact the course of your life financially. In my mind, what's happening with, say, teachers in this world or healthcare professionals is a public financial health crisis. And this is something that if we don't help take care of these people and not plunder these people, we will have better teachers who are financially fit. We will have better doctors who are financially fit. This is good for everybody, right?
Societal benefit. One last thing I would say is we hear from a lot of teachers that say, look, we understand about fees, all that stuff. I still don't feel like I can do this by myself. I want to talk to a financial professional. Jackie, you've got Jackie's contact info through this show. You want to work with a CFP. On our website, we have a resource called Working with a Financial Professional, and Scott has laid out the 20 questions you should ask any financial professional before you hire him or her. And then we have a resource for finding fiduciary advisors. Jackie, I don't know if you've heard of the Advice Only Network. They're pretty new, and we just interviewed their CEO. The Garrett Planning Network. Hello Nectarine is very interesting. We really like the founder of that, a gentleman from San Diego who's been on our podcast a couple times. You can find a planner and work on an hourly basis, a fiduciary planner. And then, of course, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors and the XY Planning Network. So again, I think teachers, if you can teach, you can do anything. You can do financial planning. You could simply do a target date fund. But if you want a holistic approach, go with the fiduciary advisor.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. And we are definitely familiar with Hello Nectarine and Jeremy. And I'll drop that show in the show notes. But he is over the Personal Finance Club, which is on Instagram, where he draws these super simple information or knowledge about easy personal finance topics. And one of the biggest problems he was trying to solve is, okay, someone that is saying, I don't want to do this myself. He would always say, find an advice only planner or a fee only or an hourly planner. And when people would ask him, okay, where do I go? He couldn't give them a good answer. And that's why he started Hello Nectarine. Consummate entrepreneur. And I feel like that is a great starting point because you'll find out, one, hey, I only needed this person for an hour or a couple hours and I'm good. Or that, you know what, I think I could benefit from working with someone on an ongoing basis. So we'll definitely drop it in the show notes. They're a friend of the show. They're one of our partners. And I absolutely love what they do. But you're right. So a lot of people, and we've talked about it on the show before, but I'll just mention it again. Traditionally, Scott, the financial planning industry was assets under management, and it was highly focused on the investment piece. These days, currently, that can be the easiest part of a financial plan. Okay. What about taxes? What about estate planning? What about college funding? All these other things. So some people don't even realize that there are all these other options. There's hourly, subscription fee, advice only, where they don't have to take over your investments. They can give you advice on that 403B without you having to move it over. So just know that exists. Okay. I'm not bashing any other compensation model, but know that there are many more options that don't have to be a long-term, forever relationship. You can get help on what you need. So you guys have been awesome. I appreciate you sharing all of these fantastic resources that you just mentioned. I'll be sure to put those in the show notes. And I hope that for our listeners, either if you're a teacher, if you have a teacher in your family or friends or anyone that you love that's a teacher, please send them this episode. Because these guys are the giants. They are, to me, the face of cleaning up these bad 403B plans. Like, again, that early post that you did, Dan, that said, what's that fishy smell in the teacher's lounge? It was hilarious. And that, to me, summarizes the whole thing. But these guys just gave you a ton of other options, other ways to approach it where you can still be smart about it. If you spend a little time to get I would call it a project, to get your retirement project straightened out, you really don't have to pay much attention to it after that. It's not like you have to dig into so much of your time. So I'm going to let you guys close us out. What do you want to make sure everyone listening to this know about what you do and the 403B system going forward?
The first thing I would say to anyone listening is no one cares more about your financial future than you, and you need to take ownership of this. We feel like we have built tools and resources that can help you do that. I'm a former teacher. I have so much respect for teachers. It angers me that teachers are preyed on. Please feel free to use our resources. We would love to do a presentation for you and your colleagues. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being an educator.
Yeah, and I would say, in keeping with the theme of your podcast, it's not too late. And you can do this.
You are teachers. I have seen the superpower of teachers. My daughter graduates tomorrow. I have a son who went through public schools. Both of them are going to go to school to become teachers. My son's getting ready to get his master's in teaching. And my wife's teacher of 28 years. I see the superpowers that they have, the things that they do every day. And I understand why you're so tired at the end of the day. You don't want to deal with this. I get it. But it's not too late. You can do this. And if you're one of the teachers who have been doing this and you're doing it right, spread the word to other teachers. And if you want to be a little bit like Jeff York, get out there and hold meetings and advocate on behalf of other teachers, because we can't do this alone. It's educators, because if you are a lunch person, if you're serving lunches, if you are supervising on the playground, you're an educator. You're in education. If you're a bus driver, my father-in-law is a retired bus driver. You're an educator. You're in education. Spread the word. Whatever you're doing in education, let other people know about this. And yeah, that's what I'd like to say. And also, thank you for having us on your podcast. We love you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've been swimming in the same waters for years, and it's amazing that we know all the same people, and I'm only meeting you today. What I've learned today is David is one day going to be Goliath. You guys have been Davids for 20 years. This is going to flip. The people that we're reaching today, the teachers, once they figure it out for themselves, they are only helping their world and others by being Jeff York and changing the system for those around them. You can't get away from this movement. And like I said, David becomes Goliath. And I am so impressed with what you guys have done and continue to do. If there's anything we can do to help you, let us know. We look forward to being on your show as well. Share this episode with all the teachers in your life. And Jackie, close us out.
That's right. So we're all mad about this 403B system. So let's do something about it. Think about what you want to do next, because it doesn't have to stay that way. But for our late starters, always remember, it's never too late to start. It's better late than never. And it's always the right time to catch up to FI.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week on Catching Up to FI.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. And our editor is Fritz Brizard. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to FI. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to FI. Cheers.